Well, here's a little bit of bright yellow coloration for you. It's dull and gloomy otherwise, but at least we've got rid of the fog that we've had for the last 2 or 3 days. There's nothing worse than gloomy, dull days in winter where it's foggy. So I've come out for a bit of a wander, and I'm going to go up the southern side of Sherwood Forest here, heading towards the country park, and then I'll probably go back up Broad Drive. It's not a bad day, really. It's fairly mild. I'm going to get milder before Christmas. But today, it's more or less just a wander today. A winter wander. And this is part of the southern edge of Sherwood Forest. This is a former area of clearfell from a number of years ago when the pines were taken out. Now it's a dense forest of silver birch. Not all of Sherwood's big trees are within the confines of the country park. This particular specimen is right on the edge, and it's a corker. It's got a huge top to it, short trunk, but a huge top to it, and a good spread as well. In many ways, it's like a shorter trunked version of the centre tree. It's been haloed recently, so the birch scrub and holly scrub that was underneath it have been cut down or removed. But it's an absolutely fantastic specimen of an oak. Here's a couple of ancients on the forest edge here, looking over the fields just west of Edwinstowe, and the forest in the centre of the picture on the skyline is Sherwood Pines, or Clipston Forest, as was. It's a shame that it's such a dull day, but can't be helped. The sun will come out tomorrow, as the song says. Forecast didn't say that though, but you live in hope. Now here's a leaf mine that I've shown you before, a few months ago now, but I've never seen so many examples on one leaf. And if you include adjacent leaves, there's actually 7 in the screen now. And these are the leaf mines of Coptodreach marginia. Which used to be known as Emesia marginia, till some clever arse came along and said, nope, it's not Emesia, Coptodreach. So one of the problems naturalists have, but especially entomologists, changes in nomenclature can be a complete pain in the arse, especially if you have a website as well. But this is a species that you can look for on Bramble. The leaf mines like this are conspicuous throughout the winter months. It's not an attractive little moth, just a fulvous brown and very small. But these mines will remain occupied. The larvae are still in them throughout the winter, and the first brood will hatch in the spring. But it's a species that you can go out and find any day of the year. Working my way further towards the country park, towards the major road, it is an unusual sight. I've not seen this elsewhere within Sherwood Forest, but it's a tree literally holding on to itself. You've got the remnants of an ancient trunk, but that same ancient has been able to keep growing, and at some time the trunk has broke off and become wedged in the present growth, giving itself a helping hand. But you'll notice this bit of Sherwood is very different to that within the confines of the country park. And that's a nuthatch, if you didn't know. And the big difference is the amount of silver birch that's here. There's lots of birch, regrowth and young birch. You'll find virtually no birch of this age within the confines of the country park. And indeed, it's always been myself and Dillis's belief that ultimately it's the wish of management and of Natural England to eradicate silver birch from the country park. Why do I say this? Well, I'll change shot and I'll tell you why. Here is a lot of birch, and the keen-eyed amongst you may well be able to see some blue dots. They don't normally use blue. Perhaps they're going for a more subtle and less bright colour. Because people, namely members of the public, don't like to see trees marked up for the chop. But there's been a little bit of haloing around the ancient in the centre of the shot. But most of these birches will go. They're all of a certain age. And ultimately, I believe, and Dilly's always believed, that birches are a threatened species in Sherwood Forest. They don't like birches. It's invasive, they keep saying. Well, yes it is, but that's what it does. As I've explained before in previous videos, birch is a pioneering tree. You cut any woodland down, the first tree that pops up, birch. Done it for centuries, and will continue to do it for centuries, long after the likes of Natural England and the RSPB are long gone. That's what birch does. But I think the ultimate aim of management is just to have oak, and especially the veterans. There's no place for birch. You won't see young birch within the forest only, other than away from the more managed areas. And of these birches here, this immediate sort of group of what we've got, 3, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, there's about 15 birches directly in front. They'll probably all go. And most of the birches in this will go because they want to open it up. They won't leave any, but any part of the problem with Sherwood is a lack of successional trees of different ages. And the birches that we've got are pretty much all of this age. The older birches, because birch aren't a long-lived tree, they'll only live for about 100 years, and they're now starting to die off. The future of silver birch in Sherwood Forest is in front of you. The silver birch is a considerably underestimated tree. Underestimated by everybody. The only facts and figures you'll hear are how wonderful these trees are, oaks. And indeed they are. But in terms of species that rely on oak and on birch, there's very little difference. Especially though Lepidoptera. There are more Lepidoptera known to use birch as a host plant for the larvae than there are oak. You can look that one up. And of course, this whole area of Nottinghamshire is known as the Birkelands. It's not known as Oaklands, it's known as Birkelands, and it's the Vikings that gave it that name. Birkelands is derived from birchlands. And for those that probably think I'm being a little bit far-fetched and talking nonsense, behind me is an area that was thinned a number of years ago. There's a birch there. In fact, there's 3 there. Can you see any more? It's all oak. Every bit of this area is oak. And the birch that you can see here is of a decent age. Another 30, 40 years, dead, gone. And I think that's the ultimate game and the ultimate goal for Sherwood. It will lose an enormous part of its character if they let the birch die out. And I'm convinced that they will. Well, I'm now heading down there, and you may well be able to make out the large trunk of the forest's most famous resident, the major oak. But I just wanted to show you this area. There are a handful of birch here, but they're all birch of a certain age. These are birches of a good 70 years, so they've not got much life left. And just further down the path there on the left, you can see some that are already well past the sell-by date. And these oaks that are growing here will be thinned out further, and ultimately Sherwood Forest will look very different in 100 years' time from what it does now. But I can't put it off anymore. I'm going to have to go down and brave the public. Good luck with that one, Trev. It is a very impressive tree, even on a gloomy day like this. And to the left of the tree is one end of the military path, which is a grass track that I follow part of the way couple of weeks ago, and it was just not far from here that we had a fantastic count of yellow-legged clearwings. And it was one of the times when, or one of the two times, when Dillis and I were able to do a treetop survey for the hazel pot beetle, one of which took place in May, and then we did a follow-up survey in July. And the July one, we had the opportunity to get into the canopies of some of these ancients, and I'll drop some photos in. The one good thing about visiting Sherwood this time of year, and this is a Monday, this is the Monday before Christmas, so I suppose a lot of people are doing their Christmas shopping, but this time of year it is quiet, and it's quite easy to walk round for an hour without seeing anybody. Sherwood Forest will never ever be known for its variety of flora. As I've said before, it is particularly poor. All of Sherwood Forest area is poor in floral diversity. Although you don't have to go too far for that to improve. You just have to go onto a different soil other than Sherwood sandstone, which is what forms the basis for everything beneath my feet now. But Sherwood is home to one rare plant in Nottinghamshire, and it's this. It's leafless at the moment, but it's bilberry. Now, there are very few sites, as far as I'm aware, for bilberry in Nottinghamshire. The other one that springs to mind is Thieves Wood, of which there are patches of bilberry, but nothing on the scale of Sherwood's bilberry patch. And it is a sizable area. I did come here earlier in the spring looking for some specialist bilberry inverts. Didn't find anything, but there is always this year. Maybe this could also be the realm of bilberry pug, which I turned up after visiting Thieves Wood earlier in the year, and which was one of two macro moths that I turned up for the county during the course of 2021. Now, if you think you've seen something similar to bilberry before, or have seen bilberry before, then if you've been in Derbyshire or on the North Yorkshire moors, that's where you'll have seen it, because this grows in profusion across many moorland sites in the UK. In Nottinghamshire, it's a bit like hen's teeth. It's that uncommon. It isn't much of a plant to look at, I must admit. Scruffy looking thing really, that just leaves. But it does produce some tiny inconspicuous flowers, and ultimately a small berry. This is the bottom of Broad Drive, and We're facing west at this very moment, but this apparently was the old London Road many years ago. Now, the Robin Hood folk will have you believe that he might have robbed you on here. More than likely, in those days you would have been robbed. But before the days of the man in tights, you may well have come across marauding Vikings. Just a bit of a junction. I remember did I see myself moth trapping here one early spring or late winter evening. I think it would have been March time. We parked the car here, and if I remember right, I put the sheet just in front of that gate on the right of the screen. But it's Broad Drive on the left of the screen where I'm continuing. This is a point. There's another point here where I could cut through to come back down into Clipston Old Quarter, but I'll carry on up towards the centre tree. It's a decent old walk, actually, Broad Drive. I bet it's nigh on a mile, you know. I'll have to count it out. Or I could just Google it. But consequently, I've not seen anybody yet, still. Not since I left that big tree. But that's the way I'm going. Up the in places as you walk up Broad Drive, you can see where the path was obviously scraped at one time before being relaid. And on top of these resulting mounds of spoil, it provides the ideal place for an assortment of mosses to grow. And the moss is incredibly green. If you want to see green at this time of year, this is it. It's greener than grass. It really is bright. And it reminds me, actually, of an insect that comes out and is active at this time of year. And that's commonly referred to as the snow flea. Now, it's actually a scorpion fly, a species of scorpion fly, but it's very small. And Dillis and myself found it new, and indeed the only record for Sherwood Forest, down on the heather path a number of years ago, and found a mating pair. And that's the only time that we've ever recorded it. That's something I could have a look for one winter's day. Boreas hyemalis, if I remember right, the scientific name. And that is regularly found on moss and within moss. None here though, but I just thought I'd add a bit of greenery to the proceedings. Looks lovely though, doesn't it? Well, I've made it as far as the centre tree. Broad Drive's a steady uphill climb, but it's not too bad. At least it's downhill all the way from here. There's not a breath of wind again today. It's become more dull since I started this little winter wander. I was hoping that maybe just get a hint of blue sky, but nope, afraid not. But it has done me good. Peace and quiet, a nice walk. Not found anything, but as I said before, not always about finding anything. There's no good walking about in winter if you want to see lots of invertebrates, because you won't. they must start turning a few logs over and seeing what lurks beneath and showing them to you. That'll be for the new year.